or if you can, yeah. Anyway, let's not be technological phobic. Yeah. So, uh, I think what is needed is just for you to follow these concepts. Otherwise, they are just like that. You find that there are some similarities, you know, in most of these concepts. So you just have to master them. Okay, so let's begin. What is action research? What is action research? Okay, so action research, we said this is a type of research that is specifically intended to investigate, analyze, practical problems taking place in a local setting in order to bring change. So we can define it that way. So it's a kind of research that is done in order to analyze, investigate local problems in order to bring change. So basically, essentially, that's what you are looking at. But in your notes, this is what I gave you. If you look at your notes, okay, let me just show you how we defined it. So in your notes, this is the definition which I gave you. It's an inquiry carried out in order to understand, evaluate, and then change. It's an inquiry carried out in order to understand, evaluate, and then change in order to improve educational practice. So that's the definition that you get in your notes. But the point is the same. It is a research that you do in order to analyze problems that are happening within a local context so that you can bring the necessary change. So that's what I wanted to hear in your answers. Anything to do with bringing change, that one, it means it's an action research. Okay, that was part A. Part B, write short notes on the following. Problem statement. In research, what is a problem statement? So in a research, a problem statement is simply an explanation of a gap that you have identified and you want to investigate through your research. Are we together? Yeah. So if you gave me anything related to a gap in research, that was okay. Next one, conceptual framework. What is a conceptual framework? So conceptual framework, I mentioned that it is an explanation of the main variables and their relationships in your research. So conceptual framework, it is an explanation of the main variables in your research and their relationships. It is an explanation of the main variables and their relationships in your research, or main variables in your research and their relationships. And the variables, nobody got this correct. Question number 5B, types of variables, nobody got it right. And I was like, and wow, what is happening? Made Makamba Zama conceptual framework in that room number 5. I explained the conceptual framework, variables, independent variables, dependent variables. Munajira nsima zonsezo, you couldn't. Yeah, so in a conceptual framework, you simply show what your variables in your study are. So I said the variables are either people or concepts or places that you are interested to investigate, to study. Zimene ufuna kuzipanga investigate mu study yako oyo, amene ndiye ma variables. Atakhala anthu or atakhala characteristics anthu. It can be age, it can be perception, it can be preference. You can be trying to study for example motivation of teachers. Those are variables. Are we together? So if you look at your research topic, there are things that you are saying, I want to find out about these things in this study. So those are your variables. And the conceptual framework, it shows what your variables are, and it also tells people how related to each other those variables are. What is a proposal? A research proposal. At least people had written something here. So a research proposal, it is simply a document that is intended to explain what your research is all about, and it explains the objectives and the methodology that you want to use to carry out your research. So that is a proposal. It's a document that explains your research, what you want to study, including the objectives and the methodology that you're going to use in your study. So the main aim of coming up with a proposal is to show what your objectives are and how you are going to achieve your objectives. That's why we're talking of methodology. So many of you are telling me those stories. You're saying, okay, in a proposal, you have objectives, but you also have an outline of methodologies. I was accepting that because it is true. The last one on question number 1B, I was asking you to talk about research design. So what is a research design? A research design is simply a framework or a description of how your research is going to be conducted. That is a research design. It's a framework or simply a description of how your research is going to be conducted. So each research has got a specific research design that it uses. When I was explaining about research design, I gave an example of a house. A design. So design is a framework because you will follow the plan. You can have an idea and find the nyumba just like a research. ndifuna ndipange research. That is just an idea. But before you can begin to build or conduct it, umaine ukhaleka ndi some form of a plan, some form of a framework. So that one is a design. And there are different types of designs. Probably we will discuss those things. Fine. Question number 2. With examples, discuss 4 characteristics of action research in education. 4 characteristics of action research in education. So what are these characteristics of action research in education? So number 1, it requires expertise. Action research requires expertise. Number 2, action research involves both the participants and the researcher in the process of research. So that is the second characteristic of action research. It involves the participants and the researcher in the process of research. Ndinkanena kuti when you look at action research, the researcher, iwe amene upanga research, ndi anthu amene akupanga participate, nonse umakhala participants. How? Remember, action research is done by professionals. So I was giving an example of a teacher or teachers. Mumapanga action research as teachers, as professionals. And when you're doing it, you as a teacher, you're also part of the problem you're investigating. For example, if you are trying to research on factors contributing to failure of students, mmodzi mwa amene amathandizira kuti ana akhonzeka kapena alephere ndi ndani? Mphunzitsi. So mukapanga action research of that problem, iwenso mphunzitsi we are part of the problem. You understand? So you as a researcher and even others as participants, you are all part of the action research. So that is another characteristic of action research. Number 3, we said action research the objective is to find immediate solutions to a problem. Yeah, that is the third characteristic. The objective of action research is to find immediate solutions to a problem, which means when you have a problem, your aim is to solve it there and then. So when we take an example of a school, for you to do an action research, you have to be going through a challenge which you want to solve it within a shortest time period. So my problems are many akufunika immediate solutions. There are many action research imapanga target. That is why we're saying another characteristic of action research is that the objective is to find solutions. To come up with immediate solutions to problems. So maybe learner absenteeism, we can talk about failure of children or students in class. Those could be some of the examples of problems that action research looks at. Okay. We can also talk about maybe indiscipline of children. Ana akumapanga zo salongosoka in class. You can do action research. Number 4. Yeah. So the last characteristic of action research is that it is cyclical in nature. In other words, action research is a continuous process. That's why we are saying it is cyclical. It is like a cycle. It is a continuous process. That is the 4th characteristic of action research. It is cyclical in nature. In other words, it is continuous. It is continuous, which means when you are doing your action research, even when you have solutions, action research, your goal is to find solutions. But remember, you cannot have 100%. You cannot solve a problem 100%, isn't it? You will always find kuti mwapanga solve problems, so there are some other what? Issues. So it means when you are done with one action research, because you still have some problems, you will continue. You get the point? That's why we're saying it is a continuous process. You can't be satisfied and say, oh, panopa, she just did 100%. It's not practical. So it is always like that. But action research is also cyclical because when you are doing your research, you always go back and forward. Mukamapanga research, mumabwereraso mbuyo. Step imene munachoka, like mene mayamba, you have your plan and objectives, so on and so forth. Koma mukayamba upanga action research, you may find some other things which many mapanga plan simunazipange include. So you go and modify the plan. So that's what we are saying when we say action research is cyclical in nature. There are so many characteristics. I think I gave you more than 5. So just try and check the notes. Fine. Number 2B. Question number 2B. Explain the main difference between action research and regular research in education. I wanted just one. What is the difference between action research and regular research in education? Anyone? Any ideas? I'm sure now you can be able to remember some of the things. So the main difference between action research and regular research is action research implements the change immediately, whilst regular research does not, in short. So action research implements the change immediately, whilst regular research does not. In other words, when you are doing your action research, the results, you are going to use them immediately. And you are going to check whether the results have given you the change that you wanted to happen. But many regular research, for example, the research that you are doing for your school, the research project, mukapanga research manager ndikumaliza, and then you produce the research report, the dissertation. Omalizira kuja mmaikako section imene maicha kuti ya recommendations. So recommendations, what you say, mmalemba kunena kuti research indapeza zakuti zakuti. the school should do ABC, isn't it? But even if you say school should do ABC, is the school going to use that recommendation just because you have given them the recommendation? No. But when you do an action research, your findings, you will give it to the institution, and the institution is going to use the results there and then. Chifukwa cholinga cha action research ndichonena kuti ma findings anu acha mwagwiritse ntchito. If you wanted to improve learner performance, by the end of that maybe term or year, paoneke improvement. If you wanted to improve behavior of students, mmapangira to implement, osadikira so kuti pathe zaka ziwiri zitatu. So that is the main difference between action research and regular research. You want to use the results to bring the change immediately. I hope it is clear, and I hope I am making sense. Okay. Question number 3. Explain 2 objectives of research. Explain 2 objectives of research. This one must be simple. Sylvia, can you give me one objective of research? To identify a problem, okay? To assess a problem, okay? Yes? To get familiarity with a phenomenon. Ankuratu chizungu cha pamwamba, phenomenon. To gain familiarity with a phenomenon. Yeah, that's good. So, yeah, true. The objective of any research starts with identifying a problem. Yeah, that would be the aim. You want to know what a problem is. You also want to assess it, yeah, to understand it. Maybe what is causing it, and what is the impact of that particular problem or phenomenon. That is the second objective. The third objective, familiarity, which is also true. Sometimes you can just do a research in order to be familiar with the problem or whatever is happening. Because you can only solve something that you are familiar with, you know. Chimene sumachiziwa, it is impossible for you to handle it. Yeah. So, yeah, that is another objective. Yeah. But in addition to those objectives, I also said research. Another objective of research is to find cause and effect of a problem. Yeah. So cause and effect is another objective. Another objective of research is to establish relationships between variables. In other words, you know, there are some things it is easy for you to solve when you see the relationship between or among the problems. In other words, if you look at a problem, say for example, Role morale of teachers. Role morale of teachers. That one is a problem. And you may not necessarily know kuti kodi chimene chikupangisa aphunzisiwa kuti azikhale role morale kapena role motivation. Maybe not working very hard, being absent. All those things are signs of role morale. So you can do a research in order to understand what is the relationship between role morale of these teachers and their profession, for example. Then you can find out mwina masalaries ndochepa ndifake yakuoneka kuti they don't enjoy their work. Akumajomba jomba, sakupereka ma assignment kapena kuti ma homework, sakuchonga, all those problems. So research can help you to find a relationship between those variables. It can also help you to understand the cause, like I've already said, and the effect, like I've already said. So for example, you can look at parental involvement in children's education and performance of children. So you can look at what did you make upangisa ana kapena kuti makolo asamapange participate mu education activities of their children ndijani. It means you are looking at the cause. Effect, you are looking at akamapanda kukhala involved chosatira ndijani. Are you following? So cause and effect can also be, we shouldn't say can, but it is one of the objectives of research. There are so many. I wanted only 2 here, and I gave you a lot of marks, 8 marks. Just imagine. This was a free lunch. Okay, question number 3B. Explain 3 characteristics of educational research. So, in education, some of the characteristics of educational research include the following. Number 1, educational research is objective. In other words, it is logical. In education, our research does not just happen haphazardly. We don't just do it out of common sense. Research. No. It is logical. It is objective. In other words, it follows proper steps and the right process. So you know the process of research. Timayamba ndi problem. Kenako coming up with objectives. Kenako reviewing literature. Then, coming up with a design, coming up with methodology. Then we do data collection, Kenako analysis. That is the process of doing a research. So educational research, it is logical in that imapanga so follow my steps of cell. Number 1. Number 2, educational research is scientific, which means it follows scientific processes of investigation. It follows scientific processes of investigation. It means, if you recall, scientific processes of investigation, we start with observation, hypothesis, and then testing. In other words, when you are designing your research, choyambirira is to observe. What do you observe? Practically, zimezi kuchitika ngati uli mphunzitsi you are a professional working with children outside the school, it doesn't matter. But wherever you are, you have to observe what is happening and you must understand the problem. Choyambirira. Chachiwiri, If you know this is the problem you have observed, you have to come up with assumptions. It's like you are hypothesizing. What happens is, say for example, mwapeza kuti ana in a certain community akumakonda kudwala matenda ngati kwa shoko chifukwa cha malnutrition. That one is a problem you have observed. Choyambirira, you have assumptions kuti mwina anawa amakana kudya. Could be a problem, which is, something which is contributing. Chachiwiri, mwina makolo alibe ndalama yokwanira kuti azagulira chakudya anawo chokwanira, komanso maybe balanced to give them nutritious food. That is another assumption. You can also assume that maybe in that area there are no nutritious foods. You can have so many assumptions. So that is step number 2. Step number 3, you have to investigate. So you have to do the research itself. So you can go and interview, you can go around and observe, you can do maybe focus group discussions. What you are doing there, you are testing. Then you can have real results. Nema results are just okay, I was assuming that maybe the children are the ones who do not like eating nutritious food. Then you can say, my results, what are the results saying? Is this true or not? Then you can say, this is correct or not correct. So that's what we mean by scientific. An assumption, you do observation, come up with an assumption or hypothesis, you do the testing, the research, then you have the results to prove whether the assumption is true or not. So every research, it follows all these processes. So educational research also follows that process. Lastly, because here I wanted the 3, just like any research or action research, educational research requires expertise. So it requires expertise. In other words, it requires skill and knowledge. It requires skill and knowledge. That's why we take all this time timalongolola in class muno za research semester yose. You go to research methodology in year 3, mukaphunziraso research akalongololaso the whole semester. The reason is you cannot do a credible research if you don't have, number 1, knowledge, and if you don't have the skill. So you need to be trained to have the knowledge and the skill to do educational research. So that is another characteristic. The last characteristic is that educational research aims at generalizing results. But this one is an objective. But anyway, this is still also the same. So educational research aims at generalizing results. Generalizing results. In other words, if you look at most of the research that is done in education, the aim is to make sure that you come up with universal solutions. The aim is to come up with universal solutions. That's why we are saying educational research is there to generalize. When you do your educational research here in Malawi, you can take the results, take it to Zambia or Zimbabwe, and they can use it or use the results and experience the same solutions. So there are many examples I can give you in education. For example, if you are a teacher, one of the things that we believe in teaching, it doesn't matter. Teaching should start from the known to the unknown. Then you teach them what they don't know. That is one of the principles of education. So, in order for you to come up with a principle, you need to do a research. You can't just say, oh, lero and win. No. You need to have a research. Then you have to have that principle. Then you can generalize it. So that is another characteristic. So having said that, any other questions from what we are saying here? Anywhere where there is need for clarity? Okay. Let me confuse you a little bit further. So here we are talking about characteristics. Now I want us to look at objectives of educational research. Okay. I know this is where the confusion was. Okay. So objectives is like, what is the goal? Okay. So in education, what is the goal of educational research? Why do we do educational research? So that is what is known as objectives. Okay. So number one is to come up with solutions to problems in education. It's that easy. So objective of educational research is to help us come up with the solutions to problems encountered in education. Is to come up with solutions to problems in education. So that is the first objective. That is why any other problem that you can mention in education, research can help to find solutions. Okay, so that is the first objective. The second objective of educational research is to develop theories, concepts, and principles. That is the second objective of research in education. To develop theories, concepts, and principles. In other words, when we do research, there are some types of educational research which will help to come up with theories. I already told you, basic research, cholinga jage, is to come up with principles and the theories. So, social learning theory by Albert Bandura, psychoanalytic theory by Levi Levinson. We also have social constructivism theory by Levi Vygotsky. Cognitive development theory by Jean Piaget. Motivation theory by Abraham Maslow. There are so many. Reinforcement theory by B.F. Skinner, operant and classical conditioning by B.F. Skinner. So these are a few of the theories that I can recall now. So all these theories you can see, some are in psychology, but educational psychology. Ena, the theories are education typical, but all these education theories were as a result of research. So that is the objective, the second objective. The third objective of education research is to improve educational practice. Is to improve educational practice. That is another objective, number 4, of educational research, to improve practice. So we want to improve how we teach. So teaching methodologies, techniques, they come as a result of research. So it is the objective of educational research. The last one is to improve educational systems. To improve educational systems. In other words, the way we run our education as a system, it has to improve. It has to improve because things are changing. These days we are using technology. It was not there. All these gadgets, social media, and the information, communication, technology keeps on changing. Therefore, the system of education, it also has to change. But you cannot change before you do research. So our goal or objective of research is to improve educational system or systems. So that is number 4. There are many, but maybe I can stop there. You can check others because there are plenty. We talked about generalizing the results. It is also one of the objectives. Question number 4B. Describe 2 things that should be included in a problem statement. 2 things that should be included in a problem statement. So if you're doing your educational research, you have your problem statement there. What should you include? So we already mentioned what a problem statement is, and we said it is a gap, isn't it? So in your problem statement, you should show the gap that is there that you want to fill by doing your research. So that one is straightforward. What the gap How does that gap look like? Because it's easy to say, oh, in a problem statement, you must show the gap. How does that gap look like? And how do you do that? Okay. You can show the gap by doing a literature review, isn't it? So if you do a literature review on the topic and the subject you're investigating, then you can easily come up with a gap. In other words, when you read, because most of the times, from my experience, muntu umatenga topic nde topic ija umafuna kuti, I don't know whether it is because of you are not, anyway, let me not assume, but the point is you get a topic, the topic ija imakhala wena kuti chiri chonse ufuna uchipange study. It is too wide. That topic is too wide. An example, if you say early childhood education, impact of early childhood education on a performance of children, tingoyerekeza kuti imene ndi topic yawo. Kutanthauza kuti early childhood education yonse ndimene ufuna uitani uipange study, which is impossible. It will take you 5 years, in fact, more than 5 years for you to do that. So the early childhood education, tekuduyang'ana aphunzitsi amene amaphunzitsawo, uyang'ana qualification yawo, uyang'ana ma teaching techniques amene amagwiritsa ntchito, assessment, behavior, planning, zonsezo sungazikwanise. Yeah? So you have to choose or select. Kuti early childhood education iyi ndifuna ndingoyang'ana maybe techniques for assessing, not even teaching, maybe just for assessing. Yeah. Or you can say, I want to look at techniques, teaching techniques or methodologies or methods. Bas. Ndio ukamapanga literature review, you just find literature yokuzana ndi teaching methodology bas. Because that literature sikhala yambiri ya. You manage to read, because most of you are lazy in terms of reading. You don't read and you can't read, and I don't blame you. So if you have too many things to read, it means you will not make it. You cannot find a gap. Okay. So you just have to narrow down. Also, don't be too ambitious. If you don't know what to do, find the people. Aminanga kathandize kuti kodi topic yangayi ndipange bwanji kuti khale easy. Then you can easily do a literature review and you can easily find a gap. Because when you are finding a gap, chimene umafuna nchona kuti you have to know problem iyi kumalawi kunoko zimene anapanga research anthu ndiziti, zimene sanapange ndiziti, zimene sanapangezo ndizikapo imene wewe nina kupanga. Easy, isn't it? Yeah, it's easy. Okay, so don't be complicated. Don't be so complicated when you're doing your research or coming up with problems. Fine. So that is number one. Number two, in your problem statement, you should also include effects. Effects. You should include effects. What do I mean? Chief Kwajoti, here you are explaining the problem. Don't stop at just talking about the problem. You should also talk about the effects of that problem. Kuti okay, vuto limene lilipo ndilona kuti aphunzitsi motivation yawo, morale is very low. Then explain what is that low morale contributing, how is it affecting performance, how is it affecting teaching and learning. Class mwakapita chuma chitika ndi chani. Because if you don't show the effect, sometimes we cannot appreciate the problem. Tiregeze tinene kuti mwana ya makana kuja, iwe you are saying that is a problem. Ndeti kafusa kuti okay, ndiye vuto ndi chani. And you say palibe. Kapena malira hayi, akudwala hayi, it means it's not a problem. But if you say mwanayo amakana kuja and as a result akumangoonda, now we will say there is a problem. So in your problem statement, show the problem and also show what is happening, what are the consequences because of that particular problem. That is in question number 4. Let's finish. Question number 5. Compare and contrast educational research, okay, basic educational research and applied educational research. Basic educational research and applied educational research. Yeah. So I gave you 15 marks. I wanted a minimum of 3 comparisons. So let's begin. Number 1, basic research. The aim is to come up with principles, theories, and concepts in education. Whilst applied research, the aim is to come up with solutions to immediate solutions to a problem. Yeah. So if you look at basic research, the aim is to generate theories, principles, and concepts. Whereas applied research, the aim or focus is on coming up with solutions, immediate solutions to problems. So all these are types of research. They have problems. They're trying to solve a problem. But the aim is different. Applied research, you are doing a research so that you can come up with solutions to that problem, so that in a short period you can resolve the problem. Whilst basic research, you have a problem, yes, but the intention is simply to come up with theories that can help people, not immediately, even after 100 years, it doesn't matter. So that is number 1. Number 2, basic research relies on scientific processes of investigations. It relies on the scientific processes of investigation. Not scientific, but let me make the correction. Yeah. It relies on the processes of science, natural science. Yeah, let me put it that way. So basic research relies on the processes of natural science. It relies on the processes of natural science in order to investigate a problem. Whereas applied research does not. Very interesting. Yeah. Basic research relies on the processes of natural science to carry out a research or investigate a problem, whereas applied research does not. In other words, basic research imagwirisa ntchito experiments. It uses experiments. I'll give you a good example. It uses experiments because experiment is a natural science process of research, whereas applied research does not use, course. Okay, are we together? Are we on the same page? That is number one. Theories, concepts, and principles. Theories, concepts, and principles. So that was point number one. Point number two, I'm saying it relies on processes of natural science to investigate a problem or to carry out the research. Whereas applied research does not. In other words, I'm saying basic research relies on experiments in order to do the research. So any experiment is a form of a research. Secondary, I think secondary, yeah. We were doing testing for starch, biology. Ndiri matenga iodine, kutenga masamba. That was an experiment. And it was a research. By the end of the day, you are trying to prove presence of starch or something. So that was a natural science, a process of natural science in when you are investigating, when you are doing a research. You are using natural substances. You are using natural objects like trees, masamba made magwirisa ntchito acho. Those are natural objects. And you are using matter. So the iodine is an example of matter. My basic research, if you want to come up with maybe some principles, yeah, in education or some theories, I've given you an example of some theories like B.F. Skinner anapanga experiment. I know you already know about that. An experiment, he came up with a theory of conditioning. Ndiye mu theory imene jai, he did an experiment. And the experiment imene amapanga ija amagwirisa ntchito makoswe. So he used that experiment. After he did the experiment, anapangaso experiment ina yokuzana ndi galu. I think I explained this. He got a dog, and every time during lunch, when he's bringing food, he was ringing a bell. That was the experiment. And then after some days, akamabweresa chakudya chija, galuja mapanga salivate. At the same time, amaimba belo. So chakudya chimabwera limodzi ndi belo. And the dog was salivating. Kenako amangobwera kungoimba belo osanyamula chakudya. And the dog was still salivating. In other words, belo lija anaipanga condition kuti nawonso lizimpangisa galuja opanga react. Okay? And after that experiment, after that research, he came up with a theory known as conditioning. In other words, you as an individual, you can condition somebody to behave the way you want. Are you following? So that one is an example of basic research. Okay? So the process, you can see, some natural things. That's why we're saying it uses natural science as a process. Okay. Number 3, I think I was giving an example of, we are here, we are comparing education basic